Salut tout le monde! We're back with Tim for another episode of the Rendez-Vous. Today is actually a topic that we've always wanted to talk about because a lot of people, when they come to France, they think that it's a very unique country, and you are right to think that way. But it's also been influenced by a lot of countries, including America. Tim, first, how are you today?
Hey man, I'm good. How are you?
I'm not too bad. So yes, people are always like, oh, the French are so, like so French, the way they dress, the way they eat, the way they like listen to music. But they would be surprised of how much the American culture has influenced our country in the past 10 to 20 years.
A lot of our day-to-day life has been influenced by the American culture. As you mentioned, the food is a big thing. Like obviously we have McDonald's at every corner. The music, as we're going to talk about a little later. But I think the biggest thing for me is like the way people dress. I feel like when you look at photos from, the 1900s, even 1950s, and then you look at photos today's and like how people dress, you're like, what changed? Like what happened?
Yeah, it is a very interesting point. And I feel like it's so funny how like French people call the French American style. So like, for example, like l'hipsterisation or like la californisation or like sportswear à la française. I don't know if you felt the same way when you were in France, but I felt like when I was in high school, a lot of French people were kind of wearing like plaid shirts, sneakers, Levi's, Carhartt, and kind of have like this skater vibe.
To me, the biggest thing in high school, and I think it was the same for you too, is like the coolest thing was to wear Hollister. Like you go to like a Hollister store and then you're like, you got to be a Californian, even though like I was in the middle of Paris, like it was like the sun was never out, but yeah, you had to be somewhat Californian.
And it's funny that you're pointing this out because in Paris, so you know how like the city is divided in multiple like arrondissements, you would have like the northwest, so like the 16, the 17, the 7th arrondissement, where you would have people like wearing a lot of Hollister, Abercrombie, because it would be people obviously with money, because that's like the rich area of Paris. And then you would have like the center of Paris where people would be wearing more like Carhartt, so like the 2nd, the 3rd arrondissement, way more hipster, the way we call it. And then you would have like the suburban areas where it's way more sportswear. So they would wear like, for example, like soccer teams, jackets and outfit to go classes and all that stuff. Have you had this? Because you can tell us about like your experience living in a suburban area when you were in France.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned this like separation, like geographical like separation of how people dressed. I feel like because my high school was basically right next to the Orly airport, so like south of France and south of Paris in Antony, and we had people come from everywhere. Like I came from like the countryside. Like I'm talking, I had cows in my backyard, and so it was like an hour train. But some of my friends came from like actual Paris, so we had everything in our high school. It was kind of funny, but I remember, didn't you mention at some point that you wanted to be like a Hollister model or something?
Yeah. I grew up wanting to be so bad Hollister model because
you still have the haircut.
I still have the haircut. I'm still trying to work. I'm just trying to work on this dream. But you know how like you walk everywhere and then you see like advertisement of like those guys and girls with like perfect bodies, super in shape, super like, super good looking, and you wanna be like these people. And it's so funny because at that time I really didn't have this image of American and obesity. I thought like everybody in America looked like this, like super jacked, super good looking, and I really wanted to be like this. And that's the reason why I started buying a lot of Hollister, a lot of Abercrombie. And the fun fact about this is people would be so surprised how expensive is Abercrombie and Hollister back in France compared to what it is here in the United States.
Super expensive, yeah. Yeah, it was super expensive. I remember we went to New York, and like we bought, it was literally 50% off. And then in New York we had this like, I don't know if you remember, I don't know if it's still there. You have the American Eagle billboard. And then if you buy something, you can be on the billboard and stuff. That was like our moment of fame. That was the coolest thing. But it is crazy. There's a big markup for American brand in France because French people want it so bad.
To be American. And so we have a term for this. It's the Californisation des Français. And being happy is not just an innate ability, but it can be learned. And the French have understood that. And the fact that you wear, and acquire clothes that can help you feel happy, this is exactly what I felt when I was wearing Californian outfit and all that stuff. And if I had to describe this, I would say it's kind of like a come as you are. It's exactly as the McDonald slogan in France. Viens comme tu es.
I feel like in France, people, as we talked about earlier, like people judge a lot, and they judge a lot based on your outfits as well. Like you have to always be very well dressed and like very like well groomed and everything. And I feel like the appearance of American brands have made everything more laid back, which I think is amazing because like it was really uptight before. So like, yeah, it's true. Like it's a come as you are. Like you can be yourself a lot more, and like there's a lot more diversity in how people dress, but also how people like live their life, and that's because of the Americanization of France. So like in a way, in Californication, Californization, which is Californication.
Je kiffe the way you said laid back, because laid back would actually brought me to my point where I wanted to talk about like sportswear à la française. The fun fact is the history of sportswear was born in the 20th century after the tennis player and golfer were wearing elegant stuff before coming to the court or even playing. You know how like golfer, they look good, and tennis player, they always also look good wearing watches and like, wearing Lacoste and designer brand Rolex. So that came from this, okay? And nowadays, every brand, so like Nike, Champion, Fila, Gymshark, Reebok, all these brands are trying to look good and do sportswear at the same time. So people buy it to work out, but also to go out and hang out with friends.
I mean, I feel like you see it more in the US for now, and it's going to happen in France eventually, but it's now here. I mean, it was one of the craziest things when I came to the US, and I think we all talked about it, is like everybody, or at least every girl here, or not every girl, but like many girls here wear leggings. And that's not something you see in France. That's something that you started to see after the pandemic. But yeah, and like to me, the biggest cliche of the Parisian is the full Adidas suit. The Adidas sweatshirt, sweatpants, the Adidas like vest with like maybe like a PSG logo or something. Is like,
and it's a mix. This is a mix. The Adidas vest that you just said, like a little vintage. It's kind of mix of like the hipster and like sportswear. You know how they would like dress very like very like Le Marais. You know how they dress in the Marais? It's kind of like this. And to bring it back to my point, for example, the PSG, so Paris Saint-Germain, they had a deal with Jordan. You know the brand Jordan. Everybody knows this brand. And the reason why they did this is because they wanted people to wear their brand even though they weren't supporting PSG or even if they weren't watching soccer. So now the sportswear à la française is becoming so huge that you don't even need to be involved in sports to be wearing, clothing, sports apparel, So I don't know if you do wear like, joggings or like, like sweatpants and all that stuff, but I do a lot. And sometimes when I go to lunch, it happens for me to like wear, I don't know, like a Nike tracksuit.
I'm still very French for that matter. I get that a lot actually, where like people that know me, they sometimes look at me and they go, Tim, you're so French. And I'm like, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
So you're telling me that you didn't become Americanized and you didn't really like growing up Americanizing yourself by watching movies and TV shows back home? So
we all do, and like TV shows and cartoons really helped by like they Americanized me a lot. Like, for example, I watched Totally Spies. That happens in Beverly Hills, and like it was always like, oh, it's Beverly Hills. Like what? Like it's Beverly Hills. It's insane.
I want to go there. It's so cool.
Like I want to be there.
It's so funny how we picture Beverly Hills,
but
Los
I still
Angeles.
wear skinny jeans.
Yeah. But it's interesting how like French people fantasize the United States even more than Paris itself. Paris is, again, we've talked about it, the first visited city in the world, but people back in France, especially young people, they rather move to the United States and live the American dream instead of staying to the city of love. So that's an interesting part. Tim, you said like, again, like growing up in France, sometimes we use English words without knowing it, you know? And that's something that I've realized coming here, you know, like for example, like hamburger, that is actually, you would be surprised, but hamburger, if I'm not wrong, came also from the German language.
It sounds more German when you really think about it than English for sure. So you know how we say that there's 30% of the 30% of the English language comes from the French language. I don't have the exact percentage of the English language in the French language, but we use so many words that are English. Like we say a crush, like to talk about someone that you love.
Un crush.
Un crush. We say the cloud. You know, when you talk about like everything that's online, we do say like an open space for an office. We do say pitch deck. We do say like brainstorming. That like we use all these words. So like on brainstorm, viens on va brainstorm. Ou on sait oh j'ai un crush sur elle. Ou we say
or even like
tu fais quoi ce week-end?
Yeah, tu fais quoi ce week-end? Or even like easier words, for example, like manager, a manager, or
Yeah.
like oh je vais faire du camping, I'm gonna go camping.
Je vais camper, yeah.
Je vais camper. Or even words that we like, there is words that we already have like translation for that. So like for example,
Yeah.
like followers, like on peut dire like abonné
Des
in
abonnés.
French.
Mais on dit pas. But sorry, I started speaking French, but we don't say it.
We don't say abonné just because we kind of want to have this like cool way of saying it. So we say like followers. Oh, j'ai like 10,000 followers. And I feel like the fact that the English language make us sound so cool, same for the clothes, that's the reason why we want to Americanize ourselves so bad. And I'm pretty sure the people listening to us, they're like, why would you try to sound cool when you already speak French?
There's this thing in high school. I don't know if you did that, but we did that where we translated our favorite English songs in French, and we were like, that does not sound cool at all.
Well, again, English and French has such a different background that when you're translating literally,
Yeah,
obviously,
you can't translate literally. That's why it also sounded a little weird. But
another word, another English word that everybody uses in France is the word fast food. Okay, je vais au fast food, and the food aspect in France has literally revolutionized, I don't know if I said that right, the way we eat. A fun fact is the drive-through. The first drive-through was created in California. Okay, and nowadays in Paris, in France, everywhere you can see drive-through. Literally, you know, anywhere you see drive-throughs, and this wasn't a thing in France back in the time. We used to sit at the restaurant, go to the cafe, and now like students again can't afford to go spend like $20 to $25 at every meal, so they're gonna go eat fast food. So they're gonna go to McDonald, not McDonald, and we have Subway, we have KFC, and if I have to like say all of them, I'm gonna spend the whole day. But Tim, can you tell us what is the difference between a French fast food and an American fast food? Because there are so many.
Well, the very funny part is that all of the fast food chains, they adapt their recipe to the culture's liking. So, for example, fast food in France, they have something like, McDonald's in France have a section called the Mac Cafe. And like they actually, it's kind of like a mini like boulangerie. It's like a mini bakery where they offer macaroons. They're not terrible. They offer macaroons. They offer like espressos, like a super good coffee. They offer like pastries, stuff like that. And just like the ingredients are a lot more refined. Like I talked about this in one of the previous episodes. But every time I go back to France, my ritual is get off the plane, get a pain au chocolat, and then when I get to Paris is get a chicken mac wrap from McDonald's. And that's something you don't have here. And like so it's funny how they adapt it. They adapt the recipes to our liking.
There are so many different things. So you mentioned the mac wrap. There's the mac baguette. There's also the little potatoes.
There's the mac baguette. There's the little potatoes.
So you know, like in the US, they have like tater tots. And in France, you have the choice between fries, normal fries, and you have also potatoes. So as you can see on the screen right now, this is our two option as a side. And here in the US, you do not have this. And also, we talked earlier, the quantities are different, but one major difference is the price. If you go to fast food in Europe or in France, the price is going to be much, much more expensive than what it is when you come here.
It's not cheap. It's not cheap at all.
The last thing I want to say about McDonald's is the logo. And then we'll switch to another topic. It's crazy how the McDonald's logo in France is green with the little M in yellow, when in the United States, it's red, the background's red, and the M is yellow. I've never understood why. Is it good? Is it because green gives more of like an ecolo vibe, more of like it's a safe food to eat? Where like I feel like red will be like, oh, be careful, warning, this is junky food, don't eat it. But that was another thing that I wanted to mention.
Something that's really funny. When you talk about like the Americanization of France and fast food, when you mix both together, something that I realized is that when you talk about food in English, the animals come from the Germanic language. So you talk about cow, you talk pig. These come from the Germanic language. But what's really funny is like once you put them in a plate, they become French roots. So like beef or pork. Like beef in French, you say bœuf, which is the exact same word. Or pork in French, you say porc, which is again like the same word. So it's just funny how, you know how we talk about like France and Europe has like better food. It even comes down to the vocabulary of the words. The food that you get in your plate has a French or European background rather than like the animal has like a Germanic background. I thought it was so interesting.
It's same for the word denim.
It comes because the material was created in the city of Nîmes. And then when you want to say from a city in France, you say de. So it comes like denim literally means from Nîmes, or in French, you translate to de Nîmes. And then they kind of like put back together. It's same thing like, you know, in aviation, they say Mayday. Say Mayday, 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 I've got a problem. It comes from the English pilots during the war that wanted to use the word est-ce que vous pouvez m'aider? Genre m'aider. But with their accent, it becomes pouvez-vous m'aider? And then they kept the Mayday, and it's now always used in aviation all around the world.
Yeah, and well, now we're switching topic. We're talking about the Frenchianization of America now.
but what's funny is like it's both cultures are intertwined. Like right now, we're trying to focus on one part, but both cultures are like dependent on each other.
I was listening to American music every time. I didn't even understand the lyrics of the music. It's just because I wanted to be like this little kid that know American rap, that know like Taylor Swift, Justin Bieber. So Tim, I don't know about you. Did you listen to like American music or not really?
Well, you say American rap. I was listening to Katy Perry, but yeah, I guess it counts.
That'll do it.
Yeah, that was a big part of my childhood. No, it's
but still like the radio.
The radio, and even like at parties, we, as you mentioned, like we didn't speak English. Like when we were like 14, 13 years old, we didn't speak English, but we still played English songs.
When you're in your car and you turn on the radio, you will hear very often American music more than like French music. And like God knows how like French music is good. Like we have like good artists, from like Angèle, who's Belgium, but we have like Edith Piaf back in the time. We have Maître Gims. It's very like diverse, and it's so interesting that nowadays a lot of French artists decide to do featurings with other American artists to become more famous in France. For example, Angèle did a featuring, if I'm not wrong, with Dua Lipa, who's like British, but they still wanted to do a song with an English artist to make the person more popular.
Yeah.
Same for the rapper Booba, who did a lot of featuring with American rappers, so like 2 Chainz, Future, Jeremiah, and like all those ones. So I find it so interesting that to bring more audience, even in your own country, that you have to bring American artists.
America's everywhere.
America is everywhere. But an interesting fact also is that French radio will have quotas that will say that they can only play, for example, 40 or 30% American music during the day, and then the other part will have to be French music or other music from other parts of the world. And today we have the chance to have Marcello, who's been in previous episode in the past. He will be talking because, you know, he is the expert of the entertainment industry. He will be talking about American movies that have influenced our childhood, but also French TV shows and cartoons and even like channels that has been part of our childhood. So please everyone, clap, tape dans vos mains, and welcome Marcello.
Yeah, Marcello!
Hi everyone, it's Marcello and welcome back to Minute Culture. I completely agree with you guys. We really grew up being very Americanized, but it's actually funny because we have a lot of movies, animated series, and TV shows that a lot of people don't know are French because they look so American. And Tim, it's funny that you mentioned the Totally Spies because the Totally Spies is actually a French cartoon and I didn't know about it until very recently. Who would have thought it was a French cartoon? Because the story is set, for those who didn't watch the Totally Spies growing up, the story is about 3 high school girls living in Beverly Hills, going to Beverly High, and they're super spies. I mean, it's very much American and it's very close to movies like Clueless and other animated series like The Powerpuff Girl. And we also have other animated series such as Oggy et les Cafards, Oggy and the Cockroaches, and Space Goods, Les Zinzins de l'Espace, who are actually French, but they look so American because the stories are set up in American suburbs, with like kids riding bikes everywhere, very much American music. And again, people don't know about it. We also have movies like the 2011 French comedy film Rendez-Vous, which is about a woman who moves to Hollywood to meet a big Hollywood actress. And it's funny because we wonder, what is this obsession of French people with, American culture? And one of the reason is Hollywood being a top soft power. Hollywood and America in general really did influence the French entertainment industry. I mean, I remember me and probably so many other kids and friends growing up wanting to get a high school locker, like an American high school locker, so bad after watching High School Musical. I mean, why is that?
Dude, it's crazy that Totally Spies is French, actually. I had no idea because it happens in Beverly Hills. Like, I grew up with this thing. Like, I was in love with Sam. I was actually in love with Sam.
I wasn't a big fan of it. I was more of a witch fan just because I had this fantasy on these girls because they were cartoons. They weren't even real. So I have no idea why I was so in love. I was young. That's probably the reason why. But Marcello, thank you for talking about this because it's very interesting how when growing up in the 21st century, most children's are come to watch programs that are offered by Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, and other cartoon network. And this also helped us to develop ourselves, to grow as, adults. And it's crazy also how we feel even more connected to the American culture that our own without even knowing it, because we're not aware of these things when we're like 8 to 9 years old.
Yeah, you're right. It's hard to understand the cultural differences when you're so young, as you said, 8 to 9 years old. And like only a couple years ago, I think Alex and I and Marcello started to realize the cultural differences. But what's really funny to think about is the history behind it. When you think about the history of both cultures, they, as we mentioned, they're very intertwined, but they've been intertwined since the birth of the United States. One of the most important people in the liberation of the the United States and making sure that the United States became independent from the British was a French general. It was called General Lafayette. General Lafayette was at the time 19 years old. Like the guy was 19 years old, and he basically became the chief of the army and made sure that the American army, the independence army, won the Civil War. And it's basically thanks to him that that they were able to win the war and come to an agreement in 1776 with the Declaration of Independence. What's very funny when you think about it a little more is that Britain did not accept the independence of the United States until 1783, and France had a revolution in 1789. So it's kind of like France has been trying to be the cool kid, is like follow kind of America ever since 1780s, where they saw that Americans became independent and they were like, wait, we got to do the same thing. And the French people made a revolution to not be under the influence of kings, and they wanted a democracy. And so in 1779, Bastille Day, 14th of July, they actually became independent.
It's the roots. It's the roots of the alliance of France and America, and like how our cultures are going together. But Tim, I didn't know you were an historian.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can go a little more actually. No, what I wanted to talk about real quick is that people don't realize, but you know how you have Quebec that speaks French, right? On the north, and you have Louisiana that speaks French in the south, right? Well, that's because everything in between was French, like in the 1700s. In the 18th century, everything. So you had the East Coast that was basically British. You had right west of that, you had from Quebec to Louisiana that was all French, and then west of that was all Spanish. And then it all became united, the United States, and it became English speaking. But isn't that crazy?
Well, that's
that,
also
Louisiana was a French state that then was sold to the United States.
That's also the reason why, speaking of the East Coast, we have states like Vermont, or like Le Maine. It's and again, so many French cities here in the United States. But if we get into this topic, we'll spend the whole day.
Yeah, if you're interested in that, you should watch the episode with the ambassador, because we talk about it in more details. But when you think about it, the states with the French names are the ones in the north that are next to Quebec, because that was part of the French influence in the beginning.
Well, if I need any history background or any history,
if you need any history
fun
lesson,
fact,
hit me up, man.
Go DM Tim on Instagram. I'm sure he'll be more than happy to help you. All right, Tim. What a nice episode. I actually had a lot of fun. Do we have any last word for today?
Yeah, one word that I actually love is the word restaurant.
Why?
First, well, there's a lot of R's, and it's funny to hear non-French people say it. Restaurant. No, but what's funny is, because I'm a historian now, certified historian.
Now you have to stick with this now.
I know I have to stick with this hat. I'm gonna get a historian hat. But the etymology of a restaurant comes from the word restaurer. Restaurer means like regenerate, and we have it translated to English with the word restore. So yeah, like the culture of restaurants is so, it's ingrained in our culture, like just eating out and enjoying. It's like restaurants. It's such a big part of our culture. And
let me take the historian hat real quick. Restaurant first. I can try. The first restaurant started in, I think, 1760s and 1780s, when legend says that chefs for the kings, opened their own shops, so own restaurant. It came from eating one meal at one time to eating a meal of your choice at the time of your choice. This is literally what created the word restaurant, and it evolved to what we have today, developed the culture of food, and now we stayed at dinner at the restaurant for however long we want, and have like cheese and then bun, and then all this amazing French food.
There's not much sources on that, but the legend says that after 1789, when well, the king got his head chopped off. All the chefs that were working for the kings and all the counts had no jobs. And so what they did is they were very entrepreneurial. Entrepreneur, that's a French word. They created their own little places to eat. And at the beginning, it wasn't like an a la carte thing where like you didn't have a menu and they made everything. It was more of a, they make a soup and they tell you if you show up from 12 to 2, then you can eat. And it slightly evolved into a more a la carte as we know it today. But
all right. Thanks for completing my knowledge. You know, Tim, you know, you're always appreciated for that. I think it's a good time to say au revoir to our lovely people listening and watching this podcast.
Oui, on se dit à bientôt.
On dit à bientôt. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Marcello, again, thank you for today. Tim, you're the best. Marcello, of course, you're the best as well. We will see you next week for another episode of The Rendezvous. And if you have any suggestion for any topic that you want us to talk about, the comments are down below. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and I would say au revoir. À bientôt. Ciao, ciao.
À bientôt. Merci à tous. Bisous.